All right, now that we've got our image here all ready to go, we need to start our Unity project. So I'm going to go ahead and find Unity, click the spotlight search up here, type in the word Unity. You've got this logo icon, and that's our project that we're going to use. I'm going to hit enter. And if you don't get this login screen like this, then you need to follow my in-class instruction on how to use my account to log in. Or on the other side, you can create your own Unity account using your own personal email or school email. But once you log in, you should get a screen like this. Kind of gives you some tutorials that you can review and go on your own. But we're just going to start by making a new project. So I want you to click New at the top. And for the project name, we're going to call this Retro Game. Games, plural. Click the three little dots I would switch to make sure your project location is desktop and not your home directory on the Mac, but the actual desktop. And we're going to go ahead and turn off analytics, and we're going to make sure to set our 2D, set to the game to 2D. We're making all 2D games for right now, so we want it to be default into 2Ds. It makes it easier for us. So then you can go ahead and create project. It's going to do all its processing here. And you should get the Unity scene to pop up. Now, before we move on, mine auto defaults into the view layout that I prefer, and that is 2x3. If it is the first time you're opening up Unity on any machine, it will actually open up into a default view mode that looks something like this. I again like the 2x3 because my scene and my game are not these tabs up here that I have to switch between, but they're actually on top of each other. And for me, it's just a lot more easier to see everything. So I'm going to go to Window, Layouts, 2x3, switch back to this mode. And now we're all ready to go. So this is Unity. You have your scene here with this little camera icon that denotes everything in your game level is going to be at and how you edit it in this scene tab. Right below you have the game tab, which is basically what this camera object, if I select it here, is rendering out. Then you have these three kind of vertical tabs on the right, the one for hierarchy, which is kind of a outline view of all the objects in our current scene. Our current scene is untitled because we don't have it saved, and right now I just have the main camera, and it is actually selected. The next tab is the project tab, and it has this assets folder, which is basically where we're going to have all of our things that we're going to use for our game. So that includes our coding, our scripts, our images, any 3D models if we were making a 3D game, and any textures and things like that that we would apply to our 3D models, our 2D images, our graphical user interface items. They're all going to be stored in this assets folder. You have this little preview assets folder thing here. Since I have the assets folder selected, it says this folder is empty, so that's what this kind of sidebar is. I like to come down here on the bottom and drag the little circle emblem to the left. And then last but not least, we have the inspector here, and the inspector here is basically describes whatever object you are selected, or it has, you know, different settings and things like that for whatever we have selected in Unity. In this case, it's the main camera, so we have this transform component at the top, and then we have all these main camera components, flare, layer, and an audio listener, which is what a camera kind of has. So all of 2D games, past and present, use a sprite-based system. Now, some of the newer 2D games actually cut up sprites and piece them together and then use that game engine to animate them inside the game engine. Or some, like Mario or Mega Man, actually have what's called Sprite Sheets, because the technology back then couldn't allow for something like with this Charizard and you cutting everything together. What really happened was you would take and box out this image, then box out this image, box out this image, and box out this image. And you would play them and cycle through them as an animation. Same thing with each of these. So each of these to about here or from here is one animation, and the game engine would just know what sprites to play and what's broken up. And these were called Sprite Sheets. So if you remember, we just got done making our own Sprite Sheet, which includes the wall, which we will be cutting out for here, the paddle, the net, and the ball. So that's what we're going to do here in Unity. So in Unity, we need to actually import get our image file that we created in the assets folder. So the first thing we want to do is find your Unity project folder. Mine is right here. And if I double click and open this up, you'll see that I have this assets, library, project settings, temp, and Unity package manager. Now, if you remember, in the Unity window, we had that assets folder. And in our case, assets is right here. This, again, is the actual physical folder that we're going to put our objects into. So I'm going to double click, open up assets. And now, as you can see, it's a blank folder because we have had nothing in our project. Well, I want to do some organization as we go through making our project. I'm going to right click, go to new folder, and I'm going to type in images. I'm going to make a folder that just holds all of our images. And inside that, if you double click, there's, again, nothing in there because it's a new folder. That's where I want you to drag this Pong image.png file. I want you to drag that in there. Okay, now it is organized so that we can open Unity back up, give Unity a second if needed to import and see our images file. So yours will probably look like this. Again, mine goes down to list view because I have this slider. But when we select Pong images, now you'll see we have this import settings under the inspector. So let's talk a little bit about what this is. We have at the top texture type, which Unity is pretty smart and it knows that this is a PNG, so we probably want to use it as a mode Sprite 2D UI. But there are also all these other modes like a cookie, cursor, default, which is kind of our standard for 3D models and things like that. So in our case, the 2D sprite is what we want, but just know that we have these options available to us. Texture shape is 2D, that's just turned off because it's not there. If we had it on default, we could switch it. And then the most important thing here is our sprite mode. Okay, sprite mode single, okay, means we have one sprite. Well, we actually don't have one sprite. We have 4 different images in here. So we actually need to switch single to multiple. Now, as soon as you do that, down here at the bottom, this button, apply and revert, become enabled for you to click. I want you to click that apply button so that you save and apply the sprite mode. Everything else you don't really have to worry about because it's default stuff and our image is actually smaller. So in this case, stuff with like the image size and the resize algorithm and all this stuff like that is will not affect us until our image is actually greater than 2048 pixels. So we don't have to worry about any of that, but just know that these are a bunch of settings. We can switch settings to the default, mobile, Android, and HTML. So depending on if you build your game into certain settings, you have these setting changes. But next what I want to do is I want to click the Sprite Editor. Now, the Sprite Editor will open up. Yours will probably be small like this. And I want you to make it bigger so you can see things. Okay. Yours will also probably have a darker gray background or maybe lighter gray depending on if you have the Pro version of Unity or not. So that I can see my sprites easier, I'm going to come up here and click this so that I have a black background kind of turning on my alpha channels. So I see that white is going to be shown, black is not going to be shown. And now I need to slice out my sprites. I could simply drag out like this and drag out and resize my sprites to be exactly. And you could sit here and do this if you'd want. But instead, I'm going to let Unity do it for me. So the top left, there's a slice menu. And then there's this option that you can switch everything. I'm just going to click the slice button. Then click off of it, and you'll notice now, if I click on this, there's a sprite, and these are all individual sprites, and this is a sprite box. Now again, these are like masks in Photoshop where they're just saying, hey, a sprite is here. It's not actually, if I delete this or delete something, which I will in a second, it's not actually modifying the original image. It's just I'm drawing on top of this image and saying, hey, here's a sprite. Okay. Now, as you notice, hopefully, as I'm clicking on these images, you'll notice there's this kind of Sprite Properties box that popped up in the lower right. What we want to do with this is the names. The names are not beneficial to what we want them or descriptive to what we know what they are. So I have this is Sprite Image 0. I click on this next one, Sprite Image 2. This is Sprite Image 5. I got Sprite Image 1, 3, 4, 6, 7. Okay, so we can rename these to what we mean them to be. So this one is the wall. This one is the paddle, so I can rename this paddle. I'm going to jump over to the ball here and rename this to ball. Okay, so now I have the wall, the paddle, the ball. And lastly is Unity doesn't always do what we want it to do, which is this. It's creating, 5 separate sprites. When in the long run, I actually just want this to be one long sprite and all of these grouped together. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete these. On a Mac computer, you need to hit the Command key and the delete button or the backspace button on a normal Windows computer, not the delete key above the arrows. Okay, so there's 2 deletes. Use the regular delete like as if you're using Word to delete letters. So I'm going to hold Command, delete this sprite, Command, delete this sprite, Command, delete this sprite, Command, delete this sprite. On a Windows computer, the regular square delete key above the arrow keys will do what you want it to do. Just on Mac, it doesn't. Now, this mask is the last one I have. I could rename this to net, but I need to resize it to encapsulate all these. So just like when modifying an image in Windows Paint or Photoshop, you can grab the corner here and we can pull it down and resize it to how we want it to be. So now we have all of our sprites set up and cut out. I can come up here to the top, hit the apply button, and hit the red X button. Now you'll see or think that, hey, nothing has changed. Well, there's this little circle that actually has a triangle next to it or inside of it. And if you click that, it kind of twiddles down our list of actually what sprites are contained in our original sprite image. And if you do that, you can see on my screen I have the ball, net, paddle, and wall. So I'm going to size this down so I just have the ball, net, paddle, wall. And now we are ready to build our scene.